Hey, you guys, welcome to the show on Sixer. This is D. Hope you guys enjoying the weekend. It's Saturday, really cold Saturday. Um, yeah, hope you guys are enjoying it. Staying warm. Yeah, the weather has been really messed up the past few days. You know, over here we have dropped to a negative 35, 40 on Friday. Still in the negative. It's crazy to see weather like that, and then possible snowstorm coming this evening. So yeah, yeah, just staying warm. Do a brief up on some of the things that has happened in the news today or this week that I've seen. Um, One particular situation I would like to speak up on is an incident that happened with ICE detaining a young child over the week that's been in the news. They showed a picture of the child being brought into the vehicle as ICE was detaining them. Of course, there is a backstory to that story. I get, from my understanding, they were chasing the father, and the father left the child, and ICE detained the child. Um, Eventually, they did catch the father. Um, I see a lot of people talking about them detaining the child. I look at that situation and that is a really messed up situation. Child, I mean, this is a kid. This is a very young child, 11 years old. First of all, I would say this. That should have not been a picture that should have been posted everywhere. That's first of all. Second of all, what are we doing here? This is a child that putting putting as the young kids would say today, putting on blast. Like this child is 11 years old, and you guys are legally having him handcuffed, putting him into a truck vehicle. That's it gets worse every time you look at the news. It gets worse when it comes to this situation with ICE. It just gets worse and worse. Um, I don't know what the need was to put this child picture on social media like that. I don't know why they even tried to detain this child like this. This is crazy. Like, I read somewhere, I was reading somewhere where another child unalived herself because they were being bullied at school because her fellow classmates were teasing her about ICE coming to get her family. And she unalived herself. Another young child, around 12, 11. This is what it's come to, I see. People are heartless. People are very heartless. And it all starts up at, yes, I'm going to say it starts up at the top of the list. You know, it's one thing to go after this is what this is what they want what they've said, illegals. It's one thing to go after illegals, grown adult illegals, but when you're starting messing with children who are innocent, who cannot defend yourself, that's a form of bullying. That's a form of, I don't give a fuck, I'm gonna go after whoever. It's a sad situation. And, the children should not be involved in this. I said this in one of my other podcasts when they did it out in Minnesota when they went into the high school. The children should not be involved in this. If you're gonna go after the adults, go after the adults. Leave the children out of this. They are innocent. They cannot defend themselves. They don't know, especially that young, don't know what is going on. Leave the children out of this. And if anybody agreed to stop that, like this is happening with the children, you're just as sick as the people that's taking it. It's a sad story. You know, we have to do better, and that's just crazy. To see that child on the social being put into a vehicle like that at only 11. That child doesn't know what is going on. Scared to death. He's with a bunch of strangers. That's crazy. I've always said I thought that young children, even with the police officers, local police officers, they cannot be obtained without an adult. But I'm guessing those laws does not apply when it comes to what the ICE are doing. I guess it does not pertain to them, which is crazy. But like I said, if you're gonna go after an adult, then go after an adult. Do not sit here and go after the children who don't have anything to do with this, doesn't know what's going on. It's a sad situation. Um, Another thing that I saw in the news this week, this whole thing with Donald Trump. Something about him being impeached. There. What about doing something with? Here's the thing. I'm gonna say this because saw a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they're saying, "Yeah, this is probably it. He's finally gonna get impeached. He's finally gonna go to jail." Here's the thing. Two things I'm gonna tell you guys. One, he's been impeached several times before, but yeah, he's still in office. So if you think he's gonna be impeached and he's gonna be automatically kicked out of office, not gonna happen. Two, what do the United States of America look like during their president, active president? And that's not going to happen. Okay. If Trump allegedly has been charged with anything, and I use the word, that's not going to happen while he's in office. They're not going to kick him out. It's a bad look. It would be a bad look for the United States. They're not going to do it. I don't care what you find on that list. It's just not going to happen. So that's another thing that was going on in YouTube that I want to talk about. Um, yeah, but I do want to talk about something else that's not in the news. And I was talking with someone a few days ago, and we were talking about the the, the decline in the churches across even the world. You know how church nowadays people are not going. You see churches are closing because they're not having a lot of members. Um, it's a sad time when you see churches not being filled. I remember when I was little, on to see churches packed, cars from miles away. Nowadays, Sundays, you're barely even lucky if you see 10 cars in the parking lot to church. Now, here's my thing on the churches right now. When the churches nowadays, these days, back then I didn't see it that much. When you're starting to make people feel like you have to be charged to get into some of these churches. You have to pay a fee to get into some of these churches, something like, especially these mega churches, where some of these mega churches you have to put down your income. You have to put down what you're making, how much you're making, your tax bracket, so they can put you in a different configuration. When, when was that? How does this even come about? You know, and the Bible said church is for salvation. Anybody can go. Now it's seeing you're categorized into a different group amount of money you can make. It should not be that. You should not go into a church and feel like you're out of place because of the money you made or how you're dressing or what car you. When did church become a fashion show? It's crazy. You know, I've always said the church is different. I look at it like this. If there's churches around, then there should not be homeless people. There's no need for homeless people if there's churches. Like I said, churches. In the Bible, it says it's for everybody. Salvation for everybody. It did not say only salvation for the wealthy or salvation for people that has an income or no, it does not say that. The problem is when you have some of these pastors that starts to get greedy and you see them just coming in there with their expensive cars, expensive suits and stuff. It no longer becomes about the church or God. It becomes about greed. And I think that's what a lot of it has come. I heard somebody say this a while ago. The pastors are nothing but retired pimps. That's crazy. I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's crazy to say that. But now looking back, fast forward to now, you're starting to think that that's what they are, retired pimps that are making money off of words from the Bible and using those words to line their pockets. It's crazy. Back when I was little, when I used to go to church with my grandmother, you can actually tell back then that people were into the church and the pastor was passionate about what he preaches. Now, huh, some of these churches, pastor, you can't even believe anything that's coming out of his mouth. And not alone, 9 out of 10, he's uh, preaching about verses that's lining, like I said, lining their pockets. You know, it's sad when it comes to that, when the church is no longer being used properly for what it's used for. Because if you cannot get salvation in the church, what can you do? You know, it's sad when you go to a church when instead of them talking about what's in the Bible and what we can do to bring ourselves closer to God, they're bringing politics into the church. You should not go to church to hear about politics. You hear that enough in the outside of the world. It says in the Bible, be in the world, not of the world. That's crazy that you have to go to church and you have to listen to people, pastors talking about politics. What are we doing? What are we doing here? And now it just seems like when you go to church, you gotta wonder, are you going to churches to hear the pastor talk about politics because he's running for office? Or are we going to church to actually hear the word of God? And it's only going to increase. And I'm going to say that I see in a few years the church is being a thing of the past, which is very sad, because I've always said this: if you do not believe anything, you fall for everything. And sadly, this is where it's come to. People are just not believing or just not going to the church because they see what's going on, the corruption, the scams. It's sad. It's a very sad thing to see these churches empty like that. Yeah, I don't see it being the way it used to be back in the day. Churches are being packed. Even on Easter, you would see churches packed. Now it's nothing. It's nothing. When churches start closing, guys, I'm telling you, dude, that's a big problem. That is a great, big, big problem. You know, yeah, that's another subject that I want to talk about real quick about the churches because, I guess I had a conversation with someone a few days ago about that, and I just thought it was very interesting to talk about that because, yeah, it's a sad situation when churches are like that, where now yeah, you just look at it and be like, wow, that's a bad situation when it's like that when it comes to it. Um, so yeah, that was another situation that I want to talk about real quick. And like I said, the weather here, weather, that's another situation I want to talk about real quick. How bad this weather has gotten over the United States. Everybody's getting bad weather. Um, I read somewhere Or someone said this weather is a manipulation thing to control the population. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. If you look at it, yes, they can manipulate the weather, people. Yes, they can. Don't let them tell her they can't. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. They can do it. Hell, I look at it this way. I say this. Isn't it crazy how you can get tornadoes in certain small towns? Certain small towns you can get tornadoes. You know, you never hear a tornado hitting a big town or the banks. You never hear a tornado destroying a bank. Never hear a tornado destroying a jail, prison. None of that. It's always these small towns where there's little population. So that's something to think about. Yes, so yeah, the weather thing is definitely. I feel like it's manipulation. It's manipulated. They control the weather. You know, if you guys don't leave that, look into it. Yes, I truly believe they can control it. You know, they say the sun is getting hotter and they're trying to cool the sun down. This is why temperatures have been dropping dramatically. Yeah, well, yeah, I believe the sun is getting hotter. It's getting harder because of the stuff that you pump up in the sky to the sun. It's the stuff that you got, the chemicals that's in the air. What do you think is going to happen? Eventually, when that stuff continues being pumped into the air. So that's crazy that is happening. Um, I feel like as the time goes on and years go on, a lot of stuff is gonna be crazy. We just gotta be prepared for the shit that they tossed us, and it is very crazy to look at it like that. Um, so another thing that was in the news that I would like to talk about, that was very interesting. That I thought that was something I wanna share with you guys. They were talking about uh, like about the situation that's going on with ICE. Again, I'm gonna bring up the ICE situation because that seems to be the heavy thing that's in the news. And to clear something up, my opinion on ICE, right, I don't agree with a lot. I don't agree with none of it. To be honest with you, you know, like I said, me when I look at ICE, I think it's a form of bullying. That's what they're doing. It's bullying. They're going to certain towns, and you're doing this shit in certain towns. You don't see them going to the rough towns that I in the hood. You don't see them in the hood because they're not gonna go there. You know they're not gonna go there because they're not gonna put their life in danger like that. So they're gonna go to these towns where there's no fight back, there's no kickback to what they're doing. So that's the way I look at it. You know, I've also seen that the Black Panther, certain Black Panther group that is in the news too about their thing is they're fighting against ICE, protecting their communities. A lot of people had their opinion on this group. Um, my thing is with the Black Panthers and this new Black Panther. Look, I did a little research a while ago on the Black Panthers. I've always been very interested in the Black Panthers, of the Black Panthers of the past. Um, the Black Panthers of the past, they stood up for the community, the Black community. Um, a lot of shit that happened back then with the Black Panthers. That was crazy that, you know, people did not like because they felt like they were getting too powerful. So they had to assassinate certain ones. Um, there was a Black Panther, you guys go look it up. He was 17. He had just turned into a Black Panther. He was a quiet young boy. Uh, one day, the cops decided they wanted to raid one of the homes of the Black Panthers. They shot up the home, threw tear gas in there. The 17-year-old kid walks out with his hands up, surrendering, and they opened fire and ended up killing him. This happened 50 some years ago with the Black Panthers. With one of the Black Panthers, I read that story the other day. Actually, it was very sad to see something like that happen because like I said, that was years ago, but here we are now, same shit. But my thing that Black Panthers will coming together to fight for community, that's all great if that's what the case is with you doing that for that reason. But if it's other reason why you're doing it, and you're just gonna create more chaos that don't need to be needed done, then that's a whole different story. You know, I said in one of my podcasts, that's what it's gonna take. That's what it's gonna come down to: a full out, blown out war on the streets between civilians and government officials. Hate to say that, but if you see it coming, you see it coming, and every day it's something new. All it's gonna take is one bad thing to happen that unites that lights that fire, and we're gonna have a full out war. I said that for my podcast. I feel like this is what they want. They want to do that because that way, if you do that, you can bring in control. You can bring in control, and that's what I think that's what they're trying to do, in my opinion. So that's the way I look at it, and we- we're gonna see how that goes and where everything goes with that. And so yeah, that's what I want to touch base on with you guys. A lot of stuff in the news that has been happening. Um, I'm gonna try to get you guys 2 episodes today. Try my best to do that. I mean, this episode was not as long as I was trying to make it, but we're gonna try to do 2 episodes today. And do an episode tomorrow. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to touch base with you guys on the little things that are going on. Hope you guys enjoying the weekend. Like I say, stay warm. It's pretty cold out. Different cities, states have different weather. Some got a lot of snow, some got a deep freeze. So whatever you do, stay safe, stay warm. I'm a very good look around is a good thing. Thank you.